A young man with blue hair looks on, having finally made his decision. He vows to stop an engagement annulment to prevent an unreasonable, dishonorable fate. His sister, with unsettling X's in her eyes, says she won't let him. He recalls a sound that always accompanies his feeling of being controlled. In his mind, disembodied hands manipulate marionettes on a grand stage. Massive gears turn over a mansion as a voice screams in frustration. First, Prince Edward dramatically announces he is breaking his engagement to Adrian for Crystal. Roland enthusiastically agrees with the prince, shouting his support. In a salon, Roland's arm is raised high among the prince's other supporters. The fervor suddenly drains away, leaving him confused as he remembers his name. He recalls his identity, the hero, born with the Oriole's blessing. At the time of his birth, the Holy Sword Belgrand reappeared after 250 years. A high priest declared it proof that the legendary hero had been born. The legend stated that only the true hero could wield the Holy Sword. As a small boy, he looked upon the legendary weapon with curiosity. He recalls how he was able to lift the massive sword with ease. In the current peaceful era, the Holy Sword is considered a useless relic. Now it is merely a tourist attraction displayed in a museum for all to see. He thinks about his status as the legendary hero, a respected figure. He is the ducal heir's brother and a trusted friend of Prince Edward. Yet he realizes he has been acting as nothing more than a sycophant. A horrifying thought strikes him as he questions if he just said, "break the engagement." Prince Edward smiles, pleased that Roland has supported his decision as expected. The prince's plan is to expose Adrian's supposed evil deeds at a future party. He pleads for everyone's cooperation for his and Crystal's sakes. The other young nobles in the salon erupt in unanimous, zealous agreement. Roland is horrified to realize they all plan to annul their own engagements. The scene transitions to an elegant estate, a place of turmoil. In his room, Roland sits at his desk, overwhelmed by the situation. He clutches his head in his hands, wondering how things went so wrong. He recalls trying to reason with the others, but it was only a matter of time. A deep sense of unease washes over him. Something is terribly wrong. He knows the prince and the other salon members are not in their right minds. His maid Elena appears, noting that he has finally returned to his senses. Startled by her sudden appearance, he jumps up from his chair in shock. He asks Elena why she is here and how she got into his room. Elena Clearheart, the all-purpose maid, explains she entered through the ceiling. He asks her what she was thinking as she looked at him just now. He looks at her intently, trying to understand her strange behavior. He compliments her pristine uniform and notices she is wearing the ribbon he gave her. Elena is completely flustered by his observation, her face blushing deeply. She hastily excuses herself, saying she will go and call for Lady Rune. Roland is left bewildered, wondering why she suddenly ran off to get Rune. Rune bursts into the room, anxiously asking if he is truly back to normal. He looks at Rune, who has grabbed him by the collar, surprised by her intensity. She shakes him, demanding to know what he truly thinks of the situation. She presses him for his honest opinion on Prince Edward, the salon, and Crystal. He bluntly states that the prince and his followers are complete idiots. He explains his view of Crystal as a schemer who has framed innocent nobles. Rune expresses her relief that he has finally returned to his senses. She closes her eyes, letting out a deep sigh of relief. However, her expression darkens as she tells him he has noticed far too late. She recalls how, for half a year, he praised Crystal and disparaged Adrian. Roland shudders with embarrassment, admitting his past behavior was strange. Rune asks him to explain everything that happened from the beginning. He sits down, lost in thought, trying to piece together when it all went wrong. It began a year ago, when Prince Edward fell for the transfer student, Crystal. The other nobles were concerned about the prince falling for a mere baron's daughter. An older student had warned Roland about the prince's reckless behavior. Roland recalls his past self sighing, thinking, "Here we go again." He knew Prince Edward's emotional and short-sighted nature all too well. The memory of the prince's childish tantrums echoes from the family estate. As an 8-year-old, Prince Edward had demanded Roland be his retainer over Adrian. Roland remembers the prince even petitioning the king and queen over the matter. The young prince had even told Roland he couldn't marry him because he was a boy. Roland reflects on the prince's unbending, arrogant attitude from his position of power. He thinks of the salon members, a hand-picked retinue of talented individuals. His thoughts drift to how a girl named Mayura became entangled in their affairs. Rune recounts the terrible plan to frame Adrian to annul the engagement. Elena adds that other nobles are also planning to annul their engagements. The two women describe the unfolding conspiracy as a hellscape. Roland realizes the salon members are wrongly meddling in the prince's future. He understands their flawed plan is doomed to fail spectacularly. He knows the most frightening part is that he has no proof of the conspiracy. He realizes a unilateral annulment would smear mud on the entire aristocracy. The consequences could lead to the collapse of the nation and even invasion. The two women realize they would be caught in the disastrous fallout. Elena points out that Rune is the only one in her family with the Oriole's blessing. Rune confirms she is a woman blessed with the Oriole's power. Roland explains how his stepbrother brought glory to their house with that power. Rune beams with pride, knowing she was welcomed into the main family. Elena worries that the hero, their nation's core, will be dragged into the mess. Roland fears the populace's resentment will turn on them, betraying their hopes. Rune gasps in horror, realizing she could be treated like a witch. Elena sighs, lamenting the terrible fate of being executed alongside them. Roland can only apologize, and Rune asks if he understands his duty now. The three of them stand united, a small council against a looming catastrophe. Roland's mind races as he contemplates what they must do from this moment on. He thinks about their next move, the gears of fate turning in the background. A whimsical thought bubble illustrates the impossibly simple, happy end solution. He lets out a deep sigh, dismissing the ideal fantasy as impossible. Lunette asks if he truly believes they can achieve anything in half a year. He looks back at her, his expression filled with uncertainty and doubt. She probes him, asking what caused his sudden change of heart. He looks away, flustered, admitting he doesn't know why he changed. He sits with his arms crossed, lost in the memory of his infatuation. He recalls the moment he first met Crystal and was hopelessly smitten. Elena asks for more specific details about his connection to Crystal. He remembers the first time she spoke to him on the school grounds. Lunette asks if he felt a sense of destiny, but he insists it was normal. Roland reflects on his numerous chance encounters with Crystal, admitting that he developed feelings for her. Elena watches him with a skeptical eye, questioning if so many meetings could truly be accidental. A memory surfaces of him and Crystal reaching for the very same book in the library. He then recalls another time, his hand reaching out to help her after she had fallen. Another coincidence involved him helping her search for a lost item she had dropped nearby. Roland confesses that this string of encounters led to an all-consuming, feverish infatuation with Crystal. He admits to himself that the entire experience felt like something out of a fairy tale. Rune and Elena discuss the situation, with Rune finding it strange to develop such feelings so quickly. Elena voices her own suspicions, observing that the repeated coincidences seem far too deliberate to be natural. A sudden realization strikes Roland. His schedule was known, and the encounters only happened when he was distracted. He concludes that dismissing these events as mere coincidence is no longer a viable explanation. Rune explains how other salon members were subtly steered away, leaving Roland as Crystal's primary suitor. Horrified by the manipulation, Roland can only breathe that the entire situation is completely abnormal. He remembers how everyone, aware of the prince's involvement, still wholeheartedly supported their supposed relationship. The entire group of salon members accepted his infatuation as natural for at least half a year. Roland knows the simple-minded and possessive Prince Edward would never normally have overlooked such a situation. It felt as if they were all puppets in a story, being moved to eliminate any obstacles. Rune wonders aloud if Lady Crystal could possibly be using some form of magic to influence them. She questions if Roland's childhood blessing from the Fairy Queen should grant him immunity to such things. Roland considers the Academy's powerful anti-magic barriers, which should make a magical breach impossible. Despite the logic, he accepts the abnormal situation is real, and they must prepare for the worst. Elena grimly echoes his sentiment, asking if he truly means the worst-case scenario. He visualizes a malevolent will, like a curse or magic, pushing the entire kingdom towards destruction. With a sharp clap, Elena declares that if the enemy has shown hostility, they will respond with overwhelming force. Rune cheerfully agrees with the plan, seeing an opportunity for their house to profit from the chaos. She clenches her fists in excitement, exclaiming that it is a wonderful idea. Elena fiercely vows that they will swiftly annihilate their female enemy without mercy. Roland thinks with exasperation that his allies only think of total annihilation once an enemy is identified. His thoughts turn to Prince Edward's happiness being built on the suffering of the innocent Adrian. A new understanding of the situation hardens his gaze as he looks on. With the image of gears turning in his mind, he concludes that this outcome is absolutely wrong. His expression becomes resolute as he quietly says that he understands what must be done. Standing with his back to his allies, he announces that he has made his decision. He vows to protect Adrian and stop the unreasonable engagement annulment with his full power. Rune and Elena look on admiringly, with Rune praising him as expected of her stepbrother. Elena pledges the full support of her clan and their covert shadows to his cause. Rune reassures him that he doesn't need to try to leave another grand legend in this world. Roland considers the political reality. He is known to the world as Prince Edward's right-hand man. He knows the prince's other supporters will surely move to stop his seemingly treasonous actions. Rune explains that no one would believe he suddenly betrayed the prince for Adrian's sake. An image flashes of Prince Edward's furious reaction to being betrayed by Roland over an evil woman. Roland calmly considers the prince's predictable, enraged response to such a betrayal. He knows the prince's current twisted values see Crystal as the only thing that matters. Elena outlines the precarious position he will be in, targeted by both factions and trusted by neither. In a small comedic thought bubble, Elena offers her condolences while Roland laments his difficult position. A memory of their carefree childhood friendship shows why he still feels a bond with the prince. He recalls how Prince Edward saw him as nothing more than a simple, disposable retainer. He feels it is his duty as a friend to guide the prince back to the right path. Rune outlines their plan, to probe the prince's movements while her brother keeps him occupied. Their primary objective is to make contact with and gain the trust of Lady Adrian's faction. Roland decides a direct approach is too risky, planning to warn one of the fiancés first. Rune clarifies that they don't need to warn all the fiancés. Reaching just one will be sufficient. With a cheerful air, Rune announces that she herself happens to be part of Adrian's faction. She begins to praise Adrian as a truly wonderful and admirable person. Gushing, she describes Adrian's stunning crimson hair and ruby-like eyes, noting her wide popularity. Rune continues her praise, recounting Adrian's kindness in inviting shy, introverted girls to parties. She adds that Adrian would even help lower-class students with their romantic troubles without complaint. Roland is shocked by this revelation, admitting he never knew this benevolent side of her. A memory shows a stern Adrian looking down on him, and he realizes he became her enemy unknowingly. Roland mentions to Rune that despite the general opposition, he has noticed pockets of specific hostility. Rune points to Countess Constance as someone who seems to hold a particular grudge against Adrian. Roland immediately connects Countess Constance to her fiancé, the second prince, Jeremy. He thinks about the stark contrast between the prominent Prince Edward and his younger brother, Jeremy. He recalls meeting the frail Jeremy only once, noting their immediate animosity from that day forward. An image of the Grand Castle looms, underscoring the deep-seated royal conflict. Roland muses that the brothers' terrible relationship has likely not improved over the years. He theorizes that Prince Jeremy might be the true root of Countess Constance's antagonism. He asks Elena to investigate Constance's movements, but cautions her not to get too involved with the prince. Elena confirms that she has received and understood her master's order. Roland expresses surprise that Rune is part of Adriana's faction, which Rune finds amusing. He worries that Adrienne, in her current agitated state, would refuse to meet with him. Rune agrees, her finger to her chin as she considers the difficult circumstances. She reveals that Adrienne, unable to express her true feelings, had a furious argument with Christelle. In that moment of lost composure, Adrienne was like a venomous snake, whispering poison in Edward's ear. Rune suggests their best course of action is to orchestrate a seemingly natural, coincidental encounter with Adrian. Roland agrees, realizing their success now depends entirely on an information war. Elena steps forward, telling her master to leave the intelligence gathering to her. She vows that she and her network of shadows will collect every piece of information on the young lady. She overzealously offers to report on Adriana's undergarments, but Roland quickly shouts for her to stop. Rune clears her throat, trying to regain her composure after the awkward and unnecessary offer. She produces 2 ornate tickets, explaining they are for a very interesting event for her stepbrother. Roland looks at the beautifully decorated tickets, asking what they are for. Rune explains they are invitations to the Magic and Phantom Beast treasure exhibition at the department store. A diagram shows the key players, Dominic of Rasvelde and his fiancée Edith of the collaborator house Judiciel. Roland understands that guests will greet the sponsor's family during the exhibition's preparations. He realizes this gives him a high probability of making contact with the sponsoring Rasvelde family. Even if they don't meet their main target, he sees it as a valuable opportunity. He decides they will go tomorrow and asks Rune if she would be willing to accompany him. Rune enthusiastically agrees to the invitation without a moment's hesitation. Elena acknowledges the plan with a firm and simple "understood." She adds that her shadows are likely already making the necessary preparations for their visit. Roland knows the situation won't change overnight, but they must take action now. He declares their destination with resolve, the Grand Rasvelde department store. The scene jumps to chaos, with a woman screaming for everyone not to move, threatening to detonate a bomb. Panic erupts as patrons scream about a robbery and try to flee the department store. Roland, Rune, and Elena stand frozen in shock, wondering how things could have possibly come to this. The story rewinds to earlier that day, with a cheerful Rune greeting Roland, ready for their outing. He compliments her wonderful outfit as they stand together beside a waiting carriage. Roland then turns his attention to his maid, Elena, and what she is wearing. He notes that her blouse is new and asks if she did the intricate embroidery herself. A young man with light reddish-brown hair smiles warmly, complimenting someone on their excellent taste. Elena, a dark-haired attendant, is overcome with embarrassment, stammering that his praise is far too much. An older man observing from the side lets out a weary "oh my" at the exchange. Gino Coryart, the head butler, notes with a knowing look that Elena still has much to learn. With everyone assembled, the young man cheerfully announces their departure for the Rasvelde department store. Their grand horse-drawn carriage makes its way toward the massive, opulent building. Peeking out the window, the young man remarks on the department store's impressive and unchanging scale. A girl in a miniature top hat, Rune, comments on how the building reveals the Rasvelde family's immense wealth. With a sigh, she wonders aloud just how desperate Lord Dominic must be to break his engagement. Elena explains that Dominic's father is forcing the union to save their family from bankruptcy. Rune expresses her sympathy for Lady Edith, who is being saddled with her reluctant fiancé. The young man listens intently, his expression grave as he quietly murmurs Dominic's name. The narrative introduces Dominic Erhard Ilmache, known at the Academy as the Ice Noble. Despite his engagement, he is shown to be completely infatuated with a princess named Christelle. He is also a fierce academic rival to the protagonist, constantly seeking the top student position. The protagonist ponders why Dominic is so fixated on attaining such a high rank. His eye reflects his deep contemplation on his rival's strange ambition. In the city, Dominic is seen walking alone, his expression pensive and melancholic. His solitary figure is silhouetted against the grand architecture of the street. The protagonist is surprised, thinking he recognizes Dominic walking in the distance. Rune asks her stepbrother what's wrong, and he says he just saw Dominic walking alone. She looks at her stepbrother with surprise, asking him about what he saw. Elena, however, expresses her doubt, suggesting it must have been a case of mistaken identity. The protagonist looks uncertain, wondering if he could have been wrong after all. As their carriage arrives, the sound of turning gears suggests the hand of fate is at work. The protagonist and his two female companions walk into the grand department store. Suddenly, both he and Rune stop in their tracks, their expressions ones of shared surprise. He grimly thinks to himself that this is a most unfortunate and ill-timed encounter. While speaking with the host, a maid confirms that the new arrivals are from the Geraldil house. The woman is identified as Adrienne Celia Geraldil, fated to have her engagement broken. The protagonist nervously adjusts his top hat as he realizes she has noticed his gaze. Adrienne stands with a severe and unapproachable expression, looking directly toward him. Her eyes meet his, and her gaze hardens into one of undisguised disdain. He sweats, thinking to himself that she looks incredibly unpleasant and intimidating. For a moment, he wonders how he could possibly bridge the gap between them naturally. With a dismissive "humph," Adrienne turns her back on him and begins to walk away. As her long hair flows behind her, a group of menacing, armored figures appears. The protagonists, Rune and Elena, can only stare in stunned, open-mouthed silence. He watches in disbelief as the armed group begins to seize hostages from the crowd. One assailant grabs a maid while Adrienne defiantly draws a small, ornate dagger. A noble couple screams in terror, shouting that they are being attacked by robbers. The hall erupts into chaos as the terrified guests scramble to flee the violence. Cries for help echo through the room as people try to escape the sudden attack. The burly horned leader of the group roars for silence, his voice booming. His powerful command for everyone to be quiet and obey freezes the crowd in fear. A fleeting memory of a person being struck down flashes through the protagonist's mind. Rune remarks that for a terrifying moment, she felt an overwhelming urge to obey his voice. She questions if this is a form of magic, though it feels different from any she knows. The protagonist theorizes it's a fear-based mental technique, its power amplified by the crowd. Elena observes that they seem to be the only ones who have remained standing. He scans the room, wondering if their butler, Gino, managed to escape to get help. He considers their group's innate resistance to magic, which seems to be protecting them. A bead of sweat rolls down his face as he contemplates their strange, shared bond. His gaze falls on Adrian, and he admires that she is clearly no ordinary noblewoman. The bandit leader clicks his tongue in annoyance, noticing that a few have resisted his command. He proclaims that they are the Morning Star of the Dawn, an armed revolutionary group. He threatens that any who flee or resist will cause the hostages to be killed immediately. The group of approximately 10 armed revolutionaries stands ready to enforce their will. The protagonist looks on, his mind reeling as he wonders how it all came to this. He suspects they must have had inside help to infiltrate such a secure location. Elsewhere, Dominic refuses to believe this is happening, as it defies all logical expectations. He shakes his head, unwilling to accept that his own machinations have led to this chaos. Grabbing a hostage, the leader reveals they have planted explosives throughout the building. The protagonist understands they are using the hostages to negotiate with the corrupt leadership. He and his companions look on with grim, determined expressions, ready to face the crisis. A terrified maid is held at knife point, her face a mask of pure fear. Adrian has been blindfolded, her lips pressed into a firm, defiant line. With unnerving purpose, she begins to walk forward, despite being unable to see. The protagonist's eyes widen in alarm as he recognizes one of the hostages. He cries out for her to wait, knowing it is reckless to confront them alone. Reaching out, he tries to stop Adrian from marching towards certain danger. The protagonist stands firm, his hand on his cane, ready for a direct confrontation. A captor screams at them to stay back, threatening to kill his female hostage. The protagonist calmly analyzes the situation, concluding the bomb threat is likely a bluff. He notes that the weapons are real and decides they must avoid provoking the assailants. He gestures to his companion, Adrian, suggesting they should find a way to avoid violence. With a charming smile, he suggests they should talk things through like civilized people. The captor furiously rejects the peaceful offer, roaring at him to shut his mouth. The protagonist, now called Adrian's, tells the man to stop his foolishness at once. The captor looks alarmed as Adrian's lunges forward with sudden speed. A knight named Kirill intercepts the captor as the horned leader complains about the interference. The horned leader argues that they could have used the noble boy as a hostage for leverage. Adrian adjusts his bangs as Adrian remarks he should have intervened sooner. Adrian's face is shown, her expression serious and filled with reproach. The scene shifts to Rune, who is greeting Adrian with a warm, polite smile. Adrian graciously thanks Rune for the exhibition tickets, saying she is glad she came. Rune then introduces her maid, Elena, who gives a formal greeting to Adrian. Adrian kindly invites both Rune and Elena to visit her estate in the near future. The three women share a moment of cheerful, high society pleasantry, all smiles. This polite exchange happens in stark contrast to the violent hostage situation around them. Adrian watches the bizarrely calm conversation unfold, completely surprised. He marvels at the incredible strength of women who can maintain composure in such a crisis. His thoughts turn back to Adrian, remembering a time when she was much softer. He recalls a specific memory where her attitude towards him was quite harsh. In the flashback, Adrian coolly greets him as nothing more than a retainer of Prince Edward. He internally laments her poor memory, noting she can't even recall her own fiancé's name. She tells him not to worry, as she only bothers to remember people of interest to her. She then taunts him, noting rumors that he has been warming her seat for her. Back in the present, Adrian concludes that this entire situation is the absolute worst. He grimaces, thinking that no matter how it happened, he was clearly in the wrong back then. With a serious expression, Adrian considers the situation, concluding that reconciliation is now impossible. Elsewhere, a man in a cap scoffs, voicing his bitter resentment for the carefree aristocracy. He aggressively confronts a young man in a top hat, Roland, demanding to know if he is a noble. The man sneers that nobles surely don't worry about women or money, but a girl named Rune insists that isn't so. Roland looks on, completely bewildered by the sudden turn of events. Rune begins a strange performance, claiming to be from a poor village and understanding his misery. Adrian furiously cuts her off, shouting that Rune could not possibly comprehend such things. This sudden, fierce outburst from Adrian leaves Roland utterly stunned. Adrian acknowledges she feels some sympathy for the man's origins, but says it's no excuse for crime. She then fiercely declares that his unpopularity with women is a problem with his personality, not his looks. The captor, now completely lost, asks if all the women are on Adrian's side. A dark-haired maid, Elena, shouts that they are indeed as a shocked Roland watches. Roland closes his eyes, wishing someone would just remain silent for a moment. Rune slyly claims that she and her young master are actually involved in a very complicated romance. Elena loudly chimes in, declaring she is Roland's loyal dog, privy to all his secrets. Adrian is deeply mortified by the public spectacle, feeling the painful stares of the crowd. The confused captor stammers, asking if the red-haired woman is somehow different. Elena begins to explain their complicated relationship in simple terms. She describes their noble bond as one where they are expected to feud with words, a relationship to be loathed. This bizarre explanation leaves both Adrian and Roland completely aghast. One of the criminals screams that he can't listen anymore and is going home. The horned leader complains that they should have stopped the parent-like figure sooner. He declares that it is no good and feels like they should just kill everyone. The three women suddenly unite, cheering Roland on and encouraging him to fight. Adrian calls out to him, her expression one of complete shock. With a weary sigh, Roland accepts that he has no other choice. He springs into action with his cane, telling everyone to wait. A recap shows the grand department store, the site of the hostile takeover. Roland reflects that he has no intention of fighting an armed group with just a cane. The narrative asks if Roland's party can save everyone trapped inside the store. A high-angle view shows the tense, chaotic scene unfolding below. Roland stands before Adrian, the aftermath of the fight visible around them. Adrian angrily points out that while they captured the criminals, it was a near catastrophe. Roland thinks to himself that her anger doesn't seem to be subsiding. An older, distinguished butler appears, looking slightly surprised by the scene. The butler calmly advises his young master not to provoke the displeased lady any further. Adrian furiously snaps at the butler, telling him to stop staring at her. She begins to lecture Roland, insisting his first duty is to ensure his own safety. Roland listens, inwardly acknowledging her point, but finding her condescending tone grating. He thinks to himself how irritating it is to be lectured from a perceived higher standing. A tiny chibi version of him complains about her condescending gaze. He imagines that Prince Edward would also be annoyed by her lecturing tone. Rune tentatively addresses Adrian, trying to interject. She recounts how she was captivated watching Roland effortlessly knock down the assailants. The other ladies recall watching Roland with teary, adoring eyes after he saved them. The girls gossip amongst themselves about how hard it is to live when a hero is so belittled. Adrian interrupts, asking what the two of them are whispering about. She dismisses Roland's actions as a series of lucky, clumsy coincidences. She questions if the process even matters, since everything was just a product of good fortune. Rune firmly refutes this, stating it was all part of Roland's precise calculations. Adrienne is taken aback, murmuring in disbelief at this revelation. She challenges how he could have orchestrated such a thing without being a master swordsman. Roland sheepishly admits that, more or less, it was indeed intentional. He confesses that, while it's annoying to admit, he did in fact target the man. He reveals that as the chosen hero, he possesses an innate power to counter demons. Though born into a peaceful era, he has been forced to use this power before. He wanted to avoid chaos, but most of his heroic actions have gone unpublicized. This is why he orchestrated the neutralization of the armed group, though he knows it's hard to believe. Rune hums thoughtfully to herself, preparing her next line of argument. She suddenly throws her hands up, exclaiming that she has it. She tells Adrian she has many incredible stories about Roland that will surely convince her. She asks if Adrian knows that at age 9, Roland single-handedly defeated 5 assassins. Adrian is completely floored, her mouth agape at the shocking revelation. She dismisses it as an absurd story she has never heard before. Rune insists it's a fact, but kept under a strict gag order as a state secret. Roland grimaces, recalling his older brother's excited, over-the-top reaction at the time. Adrian remains unconvinced, finding the entire story unbelievable. Elena steps forward, ready to present another, even more compelling piece of evidence. She asks Adrian if she recalls the Trance Rebellion incident from 5 years prior. A detailed panel illustrates the incident, a demon lord's attempted coup against the kingdom. Adrian confirms that she is aware of the official version of events. She recounts that the coup was suppressed by an external force before it became public. Elena reveals the truth. Roland alone was secretly tasked with quelling the entire rebellion. She adds that this is a state secret of the highest level, known only to a select few. Roland internally panics, realizing they are casually discussing such a grave national secret. He thinks to himself that no one would believe such simple words anyway. He turns to face Adrian, who now looks at him with entirely new eyes. A small, breathless laugh escapes her as she realizes she has been completely outmaneuvered. Rune enthusiastically moves on to her next point, waving her hand. She brings up the rampaging behemoth incident in the capital just 1 year prior. She notes that the story was in the papers, so Adrian must have received them. Adrienne recalls the scandal that erupted over a passionate romance between Princess Rosalie and Roland. She notes that the fabricated gossip story was never officially published. Roland Riley concludes that only the public image of a torrid love affair remains. He recalls the actual event, instantly felling the beast with his sacred sword, Belgrandi. A gossip magazine cover shows how his heroism was twisted into a romance scandal. Rune explains that this incident caused Princess Rosalie to take drastic, consequential action. Elena covers Rune's mouth, revealing that the princess unilaterally broke her engagement to the prince. Adrian asks about the engagement, and Elena confirms that it is no more. Roland explains that his sister became an obsessive stalker and is now in isolation. The true story of the behemoth's subjugation was thus erased from public record. He concludes his sister was even more reckless than the prince, wondering what's wrong with his siblings. Elena presents her final proof. Roland is the 4-time undefeated absolute champion of the tournament. Adrienne repeats the grand title, finding it embarrassing but now, finally, believable. She recalls seeing Roland monopolize the victor's podium at the last tournament. The memory shows him receiving a medal, feeling surely triumphant and pleased. She muses that it's natural for the 200-year festival to have such exciting events. A sudden realization strikes her as she looks at Roland, a thought forming. Adrienne makes a powerful declaration. Prince Edward must prove his worth to be considered a true prince. The scene concludes as she formally takes her leave from Rune and her companions. Adrienne formally takes her leave, suggesting she and Rune speak again at leisure. As she departs with a confident stride, Roland and his companions watch her go. Roland reflects that Adrienne's distrust for the prince's faction is surprisingly deep. He recalls their childhood, noting their relationship wasn't particularly bad back then. In fact, he remembers their youthful connection as having been quite good. His thoughts linger on how he might restore their relationship to how it was. He internally accepts the blame for her intense dislike of him now. Rune thinks about having just relayed her brother's renewed dissatisfaction to Adrienne. Her premonition tells her this act will only lead to a troublesome future. Adrienne's confident walk halts abruptly, the click of her heel echoing sharply. She wonders why he would convey such feelings to her now, of all times. A maid announces that a massive bouquet has arrived from Roland and Rune. Adrienne believes the get-well gift is far too ostentatious and merely for show. She takes a sip of tea, questioning the nature of her relationship with Edward. With resignation, she accepts they are all now in a place they shouldn't be. Her maid stands by, holding the large, beautiful bouquet of flowers. The elegant card attached to the bouquet is addressed to her from Roland. Her eyes narrow as a painful memory from long ago begins to surface. She closes her eyes, completely lost in the recollection of that fateful day. A memory of a grand estate appears, a voice questioning her status. A 7-year-old Prince Edward furiously asks if she is his fiancée. A young 7-year-old Adrienne looks on, stunned by his hateful outburst. Edward complains that he dislikes assertive, red-haired girls like her. Adrienne realizes with a pang that this was why her sister brought her here. The young prince rants about her disrespectful attitude towards him. He declares to his father that he refuses to marry such a low-level girl. He contemptuously suggests pawning her off on his younger brother Jeremy. A furious voice suddenly bellows, calling the young prince a little brat. Little Adrienne looks up, startled by the sudden powerful shout. Her grandfather, Duke Gerald Tyr, stands protectively before her, glaring. The Duke rages that the prince dared to insult his beloved, cute granddaughter. The king frantically forces his son's head down, apologizing to the Duke. Edward, despite being held down, expresses his defiance towards the Duke. He points accusingly, calling the Duke insolent for threatening a prince. The Duke's expression contorts with even greater fury at the disrespect. He reminds the prince that he currently has no right to the throne. The young prince shrinks back, finally terrified by the Duke's immense power. The Duke declares he will not give his granddaughter to such a rotten boy. The king and his son look on in horror at the proclamation. The king desperately pleads with the Duke, ordering his son to apologize. Adrienne mutters that the prince is pathetic before apologizing for her grandfather. She feels the real castle is far less grand than those in fairy tales. Her gaze drifts to a large tree outside the window, thinking it looks climbable. She muses that, given her position, it's better to be seen as a tomboy. A new voice greets the lovely princess, and Adrienne turns, surprised. A kind-faced boy introduces himself as Roland from the House of Oriel. Adrienne is momentarily speechless, completely disarmed by his gentle demeanor. She thinks he is cute and cool, a welcome change from the bratty prince. Composing herself, she prepares to respond, a slight blush on her cheeks. She curtsies gracefully, introducing herself as Duke Gerald Tyr's granddaughter. Roland smiles warmly, saying the pleasure of meeting her is all his. He points to the tree she was watching, offering to show her a better spot. The Duke looks on, slightly exasperated by the children's innocent interaction. Roland explains that the upper branches are too high and dangerous for her. He proudly adds that he is very skilled at climbing trees himself. The memory fades, leaving the present-day Adrian sitting alone and pensive. She recalls Roland asking her to join him, thinking how wonderful he is. She is snapped back to the present by the thought of his kindness. Her maid Sophia gushes over the bouquet Roland sent, even to her. Adrian agrees with a small, knowing smile, saying it's good. Sophia swoons, recalling how he saved her from thieves, a true gentleman. Adrian silently acknowledges the truth in her maid's admiring words. She recalls thinking he was a bit strange back then, but now she understands. Now, however, he is just a weakling infatuated with some baron's daughter. She thinks bitterly that he is now a man far from a gentleman. Sophia reads a letter, relieved that Roland is safe after yesterday's events. Adrian remembers the king pleading for his son, saving the engagement. She lets out a sigh, thinking it would have been better to refuse then. She feels bad for the king, but it was a decision that had to be made. A friend excitedly tells Roland he heard the incredible news from his father. Roland boasts that he single-handedly crushed the Rasfeld department store group. In a classroom, he proudly declares he did well and feels great about it. Edward confronts Roland, asking what he is talking about so frantically. Roland is flustered, stammering about what happened the previous day. He declares he will explain why they were not at the department store. The narrative notes the grave incident of endangering a duke's son. The official story is that a mere commoner was caught in the incident. Edward smugly says the story about the commoner is a convenient lie. He then blatantly denies ever going to the department store that day. Roland is furious, insisting he heard the truth directly from his father. Edward feigns forgetfulness, claiming it must have been a slip of his memory. He smoothly changes the subject, saying he has another question for Roland. Roland is taken aback by the sudden, jarring shift in topic. Edward muses about what present to get Christelle for the Spring Festival. He asks for Roland's opinion, who protests it's an inappropriate topic. Roland thinks that giving another woman gifts while ignoring his fiancée is awful. He nervously suggests emeralds or pearls, hoping the thought is enough. Edward considers the meaning of the gems, finding them suitable for Crystal. He vows to prepare the highest quality gifts for both women involved. In a school hallway, Christelle appears in a classroom doorway, looking weary. Edward spots her from across the room, his attention immediately captured. He breaks into a loud theatrical greeting, inviting her to sit beside him. Crystal, blushing with discomfort, forces a polite greeting in return. A whimsical Santa-shaped clock rings, signaling the start of the lecture. Christelle and Roland sit side by side as the teacher begins to speak. The teacher lectures about charms originating from the evil eye in legends. Crystal introduces herself internally as the daughter of Baron Chesty. She wonders why Edward has started fawning over her only in public. Edward leans in close, asking what she wants, but she denies looking. He whispers cruelly that he finds her longing stares to be unpleasant. Edward whispers to Crystal, asking if she was captivated by his magnificent form. In a chibi thought bubble, Roland sweats, terrified that he was earnestly following this script. A sharp, clicking sound echoes in his mind as his expression hardens with resolve. Roland decides he must have Crystal investigated one more time when he gets home. He resolves to have his maid, Elena, reconfirm the details of the situation. A recap explains Roland's mission to thwart the prince's unreasonable engagement annulment. The text continues, stating he was unable to reconcile with Adrian and is now working undercover. His maid, Elena, has been infiltrating a certain location under the Baron's orders. A flashback shows a young Roland watching two boys, Edward and Jeremy, from a window. The view from outside shows leafy branches partially obscuring the window he watches from. Young Edward notices Roland's gaze and points him out to a confused Jeremy. From the outside, Roland's small silhouette is visible, peering from behind the curtains. Annoyed, Jeremy looks up, thinking to himself that it's that guy again. He complains to Edward that Roland is creepy for always staring at them silently. Deciding to leave, Jeremy pulls Edward away, telling him it's time to go. A startled young Roland can only watch them depart from his window. In the present, the older Roland stands at a window, the memory still fresh. The narrative introduces the second Prince Jeremy, Edward's weary and sullen younger brother. Next, his fiancée Constance is shown, her expression tense and worried. In a grand study, Constance reports to a disinterested Jeremy while Elena serves tea. Jeremy's bored reflection is captured in the dark surface of his teacup. Elena stands by silently with a tea cart, her infiltration mission underway. Constance looks anxious as she details the recent events. She concludes her report on the incident at the Lasfeld department store. Jeremy states that the operation failed without harming the Adrian's faction, and the operative is dealt with. He looks up with bored eyes, asking her what's next. Constance nervously reports that the Adrian's faction continues to spread rumors about Crystal. She reveals their plan is to continue putting Christelle in direct physical danger. Their opponents, she explains, are using the romantic drama to launch political attacks. She admits that while she doesn't mind personal resentment, this is a different matter. The enemy, she says, is simply exploiting the opening they've been given. Jeremy cuts her off sharply, warning her to get her priorities straight this time. Terrified, Constance drops to the floor, apologizing profusely and promising better results. Jeremy watches her for a moment, his cold expression unchanged. He turns away dismissively, telling her not to hold her breath for his approval. As she remains prostrated, Constance wonders why she is putting herself through this. A flashback shows her youthful ambition to become the future queen. Instead, her path was diverted, and she was engaged to the failure, Prince Jeremy. She thinks to herself that her dream is now completely over. She remembers coveting the role of the first prince's fiancé, seeing the other girl as snooty. In her mind, the other girl was simply an obstacle in her path. For her family's sake, she swallowed her pride and began approaching the second prince. Her flashback ends with her first meeting, politely introducing herself as Constance. She stammers a greeting, looking up at the young, blank-faced prince. A young woman, Oriel, reflects that something has felt wrong ever since that moment. The scene shows a dim, cluttered library filled with old books and candles. A young man, Jeremy, has unreadable eyes filled with a dark, muddy emotion. His desk is covered with skulls, strange potions, and other occult instruments. A vision shows a girl, Adriana, fleeing from monstrous, shadowy hands. The scene pans across the grand, imposing architecture of the manor. A fair-haired man tells his mother that Jeremy and his daughter are getting along well. He adds with a smooth smile that he is relieved Jeremy has found a manageable partner. In a stark, dark memory, a young Adrian kneels in submission before a young Edward. She recalls an unknown terror twisting their engagement into a master-servant relationship. In the present, a bewildered Adrian asks about Edward's recent actions. Her mother explains that he seems to be infatuated with some other girl. Jeremy scoffs at the news, finding the idea that Edward is so foolish to be laughable. He sits in his study looking over a book with disinterest. Adrian asks if Jeremy is aware of the situation with the heir to the dukedom. He states flatly that he has no intention of telling his father about it. She worries about what will happen to her engagement if it's broken off. Leaning in menacingly, Jeremy sarcastically asks if she's truly concerned for him. Adrian flinches, her eyes widening in pure shock and fear. She realizes with a jolt that he can see right through her hidden desires. A dark, abstract pattern represents her inner turmoil and crumbling composure. Her internal monologue confirms she is indeed terrified, but for a different reason. She realizes that if Jeremy and the other obstacle were gone, she could become queen. She recalls her failed plot to orchestrate their downfall. Slandering Adrian went well, but her other plans unraveled too quickly. Another memory shows her failure to use a cursed object on Adrian's face. She wonders to herself what Jeremy's truly planning. Edward sits alone, thinking he has no interest in the throne itself. His true ambition is a form of payback against Prince Edward. He simply wants to obtain what he desires, whatever the cost. In the library, Oriel freezes upon spotting a large spider on a stack of books. Her eyes widen in a classic manga-style expression of pure shock and surprise. She lets out a small cry, recoiling from the spider. Jeremy looks over, his initial expression one of mild confusion. He realizes it's a magical construct, wondering who would dare place it there. A close-up shows the menacing, eight-legged reconnaissance familiar with glowing eyes. His eyes dart to the maid, Elena, identifying her as the infiltrator. He bellows that she is a trickster and orders his guards to capture her. Elena flees down a long, ornate hallway, her cover blown. She thinks to herself that she has been discovered. An alarm is raised as guards on the ramparts spot the intruder and shout for her capture. Now in ninja garb, Elena stands poised on a rooftop, ready to make her escape. She leaps gracefully across the rooftops, moving with silent, swift agility. Her pursuer notes that the security seems surprisingly lax. Elena lands silently in the darkened garden, her senses on high alert. She detects a presence nearby, murmuring that there's a watchdog. A monstrous, three-headed Cerberus emerges from the shadows, growling ferociously. Elena looks up at the creature, her expression one of surprise but not fear. She draws a pair of short swords, acknowledging this will be a tough fight. She vows to return safely to her master for a reward of pork and cake. A young prince looks on with an expression of shock and concern. A young princess, Oriel, also appears stunned and worried by the news. A bandaged Elena formally concludes her investigation report on Prince Jeremy. The young prince expresses his immense relief that she is safe, admitting he was worried sick. He gently admonishes her not to push herself too hard. He confirms her reward is waiting, and she bows deeply in gratitude. The bandaged Elena reports that security was surprisingly lax, making infiltration quite easy. A distinguished butler laments with a sigh that the royal palace's security has declined. With her eyes closed, Elena begins to explain the one major difficulty she faced. A flashback reveals the monstrous guard dog, Cerberus, viciously biting down on her arm. She remembers fighting the beast, using a comb from her master to fend it off. Her face fills with regret as she explains that the precious comb was destroyed. Her hand holds the shattered pieces of the beautiful, rose-patterned comb she received. Looking downcast, she admits that losing the comb was a blunder of a lifetime. She somberly expresses her relief that at least it was only the comb broken. Her young master kindly thanks her for her efforts and promises a new gift. Overcome with emotion, Elena expresses her immense gratitude and happiness for his kindness. The scene shifts to the group convening on a grand terrace overlooking the estate. Her master, Roland, begins to piece together the tangled web of recent events. He realizes the tired-looking Prince Jeremy was secretly plotting with his fiancée, Constance. Christelle expresses her shock, having believed Adrian was merely an unwilling pawn. Elena reports that Jeremy, who despises people, invites only Constance to his side daily. Roland realizes he never imagined Constance would be plotting alongside her own fiancé. Christelle admits she never understood the true depth of Constance's feelings for Adrian. Elena explains that if the first prince falls, Jeremy will become heir apparent. Christelle understands this is rooted in Constance's personal attachment to the first prince. Roland recalls the long-standing animosity between the two royal brothers. He deduces that Prince Edward saw the affair as a perfect chance to escape. Elena notes the first prince's defenses are now wide open for an attack. Roland understands this is a perfect chance for Jeremy's faction to ruin two rivals. He realizes with concern that Christelle herself may be in grave danger. Christelle recalls the recent department store incident, feeling it was excessive. She expresses relief that Adrian wasn't seriously hurt in the staged attack. Elena points out the attack on Adrian was too conspicuous to be a simple robbery. Roland speculates the Demon Lord is exploiting the internal strife for his own ends. Christelle notes that because of this, the objective was not fully achieved. The butler observes that Dominic's unexpected presence was likely a miscalculation for the conspirators. Christelle wonders if Dominic was also involved, and Roland confirms it's a possibility. Roland theorizes that Constance hired demons to attack Adrian at the exhibition. He imagines a chessboard, with Dominic learning of the plan and using it. The narrative introduces Edith, Dominic's fiancée, and the department store owner's daughter. Roland wonders aloud what Dominic's intentions were toward his own fiancée. A flash of insight crosses Christelle's face as she understands the motive. She exclaims with certainty that Dominic's goal was to break the engagement. The attack on his fiancée's family store would provide legal justification for annulment. Elena notes this explains why Dominic was alone and why the robbers targeted Adriana. Roland sighs, realizing he was too focused on Edward's plot to notice others. He worries that another of Christelle's admirers might take drastic, unforeseen action. Elena warns that they do not have the luxury of time to be idle. Roland listens intently as they discuss their next move in the drawing room. A faint sound distracts him as he ponders the immense weight of their situation. The group sits together in the opulent drawing room, planning their next move. Elena asks what they should do now that they understand the situation. Christelle suggests gathering intelligence on Edward, but the outcome seems bleak. Elena concludes that if the first prince is disgraced, Jeremy becomes the heir. Roland realizes with a grim certainty that it was all Jeremy's plan. The butler confirms that this will inevitably lead to a succession crisis. Christelle laments that the princes are unfit and law prevents a female heir. She recalls a rare historical precedent where a queen was enthroned to stop war. She posits that, following this example, the third princess could be considered. However, the third princess is in seclusion, and her sister Rosalie is a stalker. Christelle and Elena shudder in mutual agreement over the problematic sister. Elena states that if a fair judgment is passed, the royal house is doomed. The three of them sit in tense silence, contemplating the impossible situation. Elena reveals the engagement annulment is already proceeding secretly, complicating matters. The king is paralyzed, torn between duty and his paternal feelings for his son. Christelle sighs that the king's indecisiveness is the root of the problem. A dark shadow passes over her face as she considers the worst outcome. She fears Adrian might be pushed to stage a coup against the king. Roland resolves to secretly gather evidence to prove Adrian's innocence. Elena throws up her hands, wishing for a simple way to resolve everything. Roland agrees, wishing for a clean solution to the messy situation. He feels the immense pressure of the moment, a single choice away from disaster. The gears of fate turn, warning that a wrong choice will have dire consequences. Just as despair sets in, Christelle's clear voice cuts through the tension. She declares that she has a simple method to solve all their problems. Roland looks at her, bewildered, and asks what her method is. Christelle explains that a new king should be chosen from the ducal houses. A wild idea sparks in Roland's mind. Adrian as queen, his brother-in-law as king. He immediately freezes, shocked at the audacity of his own sudden thought. Elena thoughtfully considers the idea, seeing it as a viable possibility. The butler agrees, musing that while difficult, it is not entirely impossible. Christelle beams, pleased that her audacious plan is being considered. Roland protests that this is usurpation, a plan his brother-in-law would never consider. Christelle argues their first duty is to the people of the Oriol domain. If the royal family is a hindrance, she insists it is their duty to correct it. Roland is left speechless, overwhelmed by her radical but logical argument. Elena questions why he is so pessimistic about becoming king, a man's dream. She coyly offers to be his number 4 concubine when he becomes king. The girls agree that the number 4 position is a perfect, balanced choice. Roland sits down agitated, telling them not to proceed without his consent. He indignantly refuses, stating that as a law-abiding citizen, he cannot accept their plan. Christelle counters that while he should follow the law, there are loopholes. She cites the historical precedent of a queen's consort becoming a nameless king. They argue, with Christelle insisting it's legally possible and Roland rejecting the idea. Elena asks if he truly thinks the idiotic rival prince should rule instead. Roland sputters that there must be another, more suitable candidate for the throne. The butler's expression flickers as he considers Roland's desperate search for an alternative. He closes his eyes, a knowing, perhaps weary expression on his face. Roland thinks to himself that the butler is always far too lenient with women. Christelle tells him he is overthinking it. The throne is just another option. Elena agrees, stating that to give up now is to accept this as fate. She looks at him with a sad smile, saying he is still a true hero. The word hero triggers a painful memory, and he looks down, troubled. He reflects that being the hero is an unexpectedly heavy and cowardly burden. The image of the holy sword, a symbol of his power, brings him no comfort. A flashback reveals a 5-year-old Roland holding a massive glowing holy sword. The moment he touched the powerful blade, it felt like part of him. He instantly understood with absolute clarity that the sword had chosen him. The memory flashes to a moment of fierce determination against a city backdrop. The grand city stood as a silent witness to the unfolding events. He recalls standing beside a young, blonde Prince Edward on that fateful day. When assassins suddenly attacked, Roland instinctively summoned his powerful sword, Belgranda. With a swift, practiced gesture, he called upon the power of his blade. In a single devastating instant, he annihilated all the assassins around him. A stunned Prince Edward rushes to his side, exclaiming how amazing he is. The prince excitedly praises Roland's power, calling him his true right-hand man. Edward's words of admiration echoed, cementing their bond in that moment. Roland felt only relief, happy that he had protected the prince from harm. Later, the initial elation began to fade within the Grand Manor's walls. He stood alone in a long, empty corridor, the mood shifting dramatically. The weight of his actions suddenly crashed down, forcing him to his knees. He stared at his own small hands, horrified by what they had done. The terrifying realization of his power to take life washed over him. A soft voice calls out to him, addressing him as her stepbrother. Looking up, he saw his young stepsister, Rune, standing in the doorway. She asked him a heavy question. What did he truly wish for? Still on the floor, he began to form an answer to her question. The memory fades into the present as his older self continues the thought. His mind concludes he will marry Lady Adrian and legally become the king. He snaps back to reality, completely bewildered by his own strange thought. His companions debate the best way to promote his good qualities for kingship. A chibi Roland wonders if they are still talking about this topic. He argues that his original goal was to protect Adrian from an unjust fate. Elena suggests the root of all evil is the love-crazed prince. Roland looks on, exhausted by the chaotic turn of the conversation. Elena suggests a quick resolution would be best for everyone involved. He can only sigh, completely drained by their bizarre logic and arguments. He protests that it's not so simple and that an engagement is impossible. Loon warns him that his cold expression will only make people dislike him. She teases him, asking if perhaps he is more interested in men. Flustered, he recalls being glad he wasn't a girl when asked to marry Edward. Elena reveals that strange rumors about him are already circulating through a secret society. Roland looks on, his expression serious as he processes this new information. He asks her to clarify what she means by rumors in a secret society. She explains it's a secret/ship club dealing with romantic relationships. He asks in confusion what a /ship is. Elena explains it refers to women who create fan works about male relationships. She presents a romanticized image of him as the receptive partner to Edward. These stories are secretly produced and sold as self-published books by the club. Roland is left completely speechless, his eyes wide with utter shock. Loon and Elena argue about the propriety of selling such things without permission. Roland is still reeling, unable to process the bizarre revelation. A quiet, knowing look from Rune confirms her own opinions on the matter. He mutters to himself that this is unbelievable, that it can't be true. Loon declares that she absolutely cannot discuss this topic with Elena. She passionately proclaims that the pairing of Edward and her stepbrother is canon. The scene shows the three of them in the room, their debate raging. Roland is left utterly bewildered and confused by her declaration. Prince Edward enters, musing on the beauty of serving a prince. Loon dreamily agrees, stating a beauty's heart will devote its all. Roland displays a fierce determination, vowing to embrace his heroic role. In another mood, he muses that his cute appearance makes him popular. Elena passionately explains Roland's complex inner world to a stoic butler. A memory shows the butler scolding a young, embarrassed Roland for his pride. The prince wishes he had covered his ears to block out the words. The Grand Academy building stands as a backdrop for the unfolding drama. Elena, in the present, covers her own ears in sympathetic embarrassment. Loon tells Elena that there's no point in arguing with her any further. Elena holds up a hand, calling for a temporary truce in their debate. Loon reflects on the words of a legendary author, Christie's Gorda. She recalls the author's belief that some things don't need a neat conclusion. Elena finds peace in the idea of her beloved knights finding happiness together. Loon has a sudden realization, a gasp escaping her lips. A small, knowing smile spreads across her face as she understands. She admits that she had forgotten something very important. Elena speaks of the author's genius in incorporating secret techniques into her work. The two women clasp hands, agreeing to resume their passionate discussion later. Roland appears, wearily asking if their strange conversation is finally over. The two girls realize they've forgotten their original topic about the engagements. They look at each other, confirming they had been completely sidetracked. Roland complains that they've ignored his wishes and derailed the entire conversation. He taps his temple, frustrated they are casually deciding the prince's fates. Elena sighs, wondering which of the two princes they should settle on. Roland finds the entire situation becoming increasingly troublesome and complicated. The girls whisper a new plan to eliminate all the unrefined options. Roland listens in, sensing a dangerous countdown has begun. A handsome student named Philman invites a beautiful blonde girl, Crystal, to a party. Crystal politely refuses, saying it would be presumptuous of her to attend. She continues on her way after Philman waves a friendly goodbye. Another suitor, Dominic, invites her for a voyage on his family's ship. She again refuses, explaining that she gets seasick and would be a burden. She walks away, leaving Dominic to watch her go. A third, more energetic boy, Maximilian, suggests a relaxing vacation for her. Christelle apologizes once more, explaining she can't take a long break. Maximilian clutches his head in theatrical despair at her refusal. Crystal walks on, her mind repeating her own name to ground herself. Her eyes suddenly widen in panic as she remembers an urgent errand. She apologizes profusely for her forgetfulness and the need to rush off. With a final, hasty apology, she turns and flees down the hall. She runs down the long, ornate school corridor, her hair flying behind her. Two other students, Adolphe and Estelle, watch her hasty departure with interest. Estelle remarks that she is like a fairy who has descended to dance. Crystal's full name is revealed, Crystal Rita Chesty. Two other girls gossip, accusing her of getting close to the noble boys. They sneer that she is using her pretty face to seduce men. A grand ornate building stands tall, its presence underscored by a dramatic sound effect. A young woman with long blonde hair lets out a weary, audible sigh. Standing in her school uniform, the blonde girl appears utterly dejected and lost. Her troubled expression reveals her inner turmoil as she questions how things got this way. She recalls the sudden moment when the memories of her previous life came flooding back. In an ornate mirror, she examines her reflection in a state of quiet disbelief. A jolt of recognition hits her as she realizes she is now Crystal. She recognizes the cover of the romance game, Rainbow Romanesque, and her place in it. With a shocked expression, she processes the unbelievable truth of her reincarnation as the game's heroine. A wave of pure ecstasy washes over her as she celebrates winning at her new life. Her face is alight with a huge, joyful smile, basking in her good fortune. The initial euphoria quickly fades, and she slumps to the floor in defeat. Clutching her head, she thinks that her new reality is simply impossible to handle. She despairs over the stress of dealing with royalty and villainesses as a mere commoner. A memory of her past life reveals she died from an unfortunate accident in a bathtub. She recalls being a shut-in otaku, finding the idea of a real-life harem far too overwhelming. A new resolve forms. She decides to proactively destroy any potential romance flags. Her plan is to avoid the aristocracy and never establish contact with the main characters. She remembers thinking that being born with this beautiful face was a blessing. However, her plans did not unfold as she had hoped. It felt as though an unseen force was pushing her to follow the game's plot. A view of the imposing academy looms as she walks towards her unavoidable fate. She stares at the school in disbelief, wondering why her plans failed. A memory shows her initial, naive optimism about her new life. She had thought it would be fine as long as she didn't get too close. She even found new friends who shared her otaku interests. It was a relief to discover that she wasn't the only fan in this world. Her second life, she had thought, was going to be unbelievably fun. That happy thought is violently shattered by a sharp slashing sound effect. A young man with reddish-brown hair appears, his expression one of surprise. Crystal stares back at him, her own face a mask of matching shock. The two of them stand in a stone courtyard, frozen in a moment of unexpected encounter. Her composure completely shatters into a look of pure, comedic horror. She bows deeply in a frantic, profuse apology to the stunned young man. He watches her flee, wondering about the strange girl he just met. She runs away in a panic, realizing she just met the handsome Roland from the game. She scolds herself, thinking that her reaction was not the point of her plan. With grim determination, she reminds herself not to interact with the captured targets. Yet a cascade of memories shows her failing, having already met all of them. Back in the present, she sits in a library reflecting on how she got here. She lets out another tired sigh, the weight of her situation pressing down on her. She envisions the game's harem route ending, a lavish graduation party dance. But she knows that in reality, such an ending would be a world-ending catastrophe. Furthermore, she considers the feelings of the other girls involved. She feels immense guilt, knowing she would die of remorse if she caused their engagements to fail. A montage shows the game's handsome suitors fawning over her as she flees in terror. However, she recalls there was one exception to this pattern. One person, after showing interest, suddenly began observing her from a distance. That person was Roland Valerie Oriol, a duke with a thoughtful expression. While she doesn't know why he grew cold, she is grateful for one less target. She finds solace in her unpopular part-time job transcribing books. The dusty library is her sanctuary, a place where nobles would never venture. She reflects on her harsh reality as the poor daughter of a fallen noble house. Finishing her transcription work for the day, she decides to move on to her real passion. She deftly ties her long blonde hair back, preparing for her true work. With a focused expression, she picks up a different set of papers. She looks down at her illustrations, ready to begin finishing her project. A sketch of an intimate scene between two male characters reveals her secret hobby. She knows she has readers who are eagerly awaiting her next creation. With a bright, determined smile, she resolves to create a new work for Christie's Gorda. Her true calling, she decides, is not romance, but bringing joy to her fellow fans. Her thoughts drift back to Duke Roland, his pensive expression captured in a sketch. She wonders if he might have somehow discovered her true identity in this world. The thought lingers that he might know, because he is the legendary. The story flashes back 5 years to the foreboding territory of the Demon King. A young Roland looks up, surprised to be addressed by the demonic ruler. The Demon King, seated on her throne, explains the problem of factions seeking power. She reveals that the radical Demon Duke Dranx is plotting a rebellion she wants him to stop. Roland questions why the Demon King doesn't handle the uprising herself. He looks on with a slightly confused and hesitant expression. The diminutive Demon King, the 169th of her line, sits with composed authority. She playfully chides Roland, asking if the legend of the hero isn't about quelling such rebellions. He concedes that the Demon King has more than enough power to handle it herself. A vision of blood-soaked hands flashes through his mind, reinforcing his aversion to violence. He explains that if possible, he would prefer to see no needless bloodshed. The Demon King agrees, explaining that a direct crackdown would only provoke more rebellion later. She knows that such an action would cause innocent people to get caught in the crossfire. With a frustrated sigh, she laments that she cannot resort to the old ways of her people. The Demon King passionately declares that in this age, money is the ultimate form of justice. Young Roland quietly concedes that money is, of course, very important. She states that the others do not know the true power of the hero of the Divine Blade. She suggests that demonstrating his power would bring the demon race to heel. She adds that she has already secured permission from the Holy Maiden Shrine for him to act. With a knowing smile, she reminds him that great power comes with great responsibility. She asks if he isn't using his own power for a just cause. He looks down at his hands, contemplating the heavy weight of his abilities. A memory surfaces of a young girl asking him what he wishes for with his power. Back in the present, he looks up, his expression shifting from conflict to resolve. He clenches his small fists, his decision made. The Demon King looks on, waiting for him to confirm his acceptance of the mission. He declares that if it means everyone can live in peace, he will wield his sword. She reminds him that this request is a state secret and must be handled with discretion. A wide, delighted grin spreads across her face as she praises his heroic spirit. She leans in with a sly, conspiratorial look in her eyes. Roland sighs, stating that he would prefer to handle this matter cleanly. The Demon King floats towards him, suggesting that if he is worried, there is another option. She tells him that while she doesn't think it will happen, there is a possibility. She leans in close, asking if he will join her in the future. He is taken aback by her sudden suggestion of an alliance between the hero and Demon Lord. He dismisses the idea, arguing it would only cause more backlash from the demon race. A young girl with demonic horns complains that waiting is tedious and boring. Spotting Roland, she asks if he can use an abacus. He confirms he can, and she calls him reliable. Roland, however, expresses concern about being allowed to see another country's state secret documents. He quickly decides it's probably fine and begins to work with a small abacus. The horn girl complains that her subordinates are all brawn and no brains, unable to use an abacus. Meanwhile, Roland observes that everyone seems to have a rather loose definition of what constitutes a state secret. His fingers move with practiced speed and skill across the beads of his own abacus. The sound of his rapid calculations echoes as he works through the documents. The scene abruptly shifts, flashing back to 1 year prior in the royal capital. The transition from the previous scene to the city street is completed. On the street, Roland and a girl with a rose in her hair look up, startled by something. They both register the commotion nearby, wondering what is happening. A maid with a long ponytail, Elena, runs towards them, calling out for her young master. She frantically explains that a behemoth from a local menagerie has escaped, creating a crisis. The rose-haired girl worries that if they don't act quickly, someone is going to get hurt. Elena suggests calling for the official anti-monster guard unit to handle the situation. Roland grimly concludes that there isn't enough time to wait for them to arrive. The rose-haired girl gasps, her hands clasped together as she understands the gravity of his words. The three of them stand together on the cobblestone street, the urgency clear on their faces. Roland looks on, his expression one of determination mixed with a hint of worry. He lets out a heavy, resigned sigh, accepting the difficult task that has fallen to him. With resolved eyes, he declares that he has no choice but to go and stop it himself. Turning to Elena, he instructs her to go and explain the situation to the menagerie's owner. Elena confirms she understands as the rose-haired girl waves, cheering on her stepbrother. The rose-haired girl's face is alight with pure admiration and pride as she watches him go. From a distance, a blond man observes, musing that it has been a while since Roland used his divine sword. Elsewhere in the city, a maid is hurrying a long-haired blonde noblewoman, Lady Rosaris, to safety. A bystander shouts a warning about the danger, but Rosaris looks back with determined concern. Another person yells for everyone to run as Rosaris stares intently towards the commotion. A recap panel shows Roland, sword ready, tasked with rescuing Rosaris from the rampaging behemoth. After the event, a concerned Roland asks the stunned princess if she is all right. Rosaris looks at her rescuer with wide-eyed recognition, stammering his name. Later, the blonde prince welcomes Roland warmly to a grand estate, holding a bouquet of flowers. Walking through a lavish hall, he praises Roland for saving the people with his divine sword. The prince insists Roland should hold his head high, having heard of his magnificent deeds from Rosaris. Roland, looking embarrassed, apologizes for the trouble and inconvenience he caused the princess. The prince laughingly reveals a gossip magazine, explaining the incident was spun into a romance story. Dismissing the gossip, he reassures Roland not to worry as he leads him to a closed door. The prince cheerfully throws open the door, announcing that Rosaris has a visitor, Roland. From inside the room, Rosaris's delighted voice calls out Roland's name and greeting. She appears beaming and says she's been wanting to meet him, surrounded by portraits of him. Roland can only force a strained smile, letting out a small, horrified sound at the sight. The camera pans across the shrine-like room, filled with his pictures on the wall. The prince reflects on his plan to get Rosaris interested in Roland and his stepbrother. In a sparring memory, he recalls being worried about Rosaris's listlessness after her illness. He remembers seeing her at her window, looking energetic despite the doctor's grim diagnosis. Seeing her in that state, his expression hardens as he resolves to take action. His face is filled with confident determination, his plan now firmly set in motion. At a tournament, the announcer declares Roland the winner for the 4th consecutive time. From the sidelines, the blonde prince claps enthusiastically for Roland's victory. He declares with a vampiric grin that Roland is truly worthy of being his right-hand man. In a throne room, the king tells Roland that Dominic is excellent, but his sword arm is still lacking. The king muses that no one can stand a chance against the legendary hero of the divine sword. The prince simply smiles, agreeing that it's good that way. Roland tells Dominic that those who possess power have the qualification to display it. Dominic, with his arms crossed, soberly agrees with Roland's assessment. Walking alone, Roland sighs that he's getting tired of competing at the prince's request. He knows that if he were to truly compete, the difference in their power is obvious. He would win instantly, but he refrains from showing his full strength. He realizes the prince just wants to show off his excellent subordinate on the winner's podium. He finds the nickname he has been given, Absolute Champion Roland, to be incredibly embarrassing. He clenches his fist, thinking of the grand, cringeworthy title. After a tournament, Dominic appears and offers his congratulations on the victory. Roland turns, surprised to see Dominic standing there, waiting for him. Dominic stands with his arms crossed, his expression serious and unreadable. Roland thanks him but admits the grand title is a bit embarrassing. Dominic notes that the prince was very pleased, praising his excellent right arm. With a slightly strained smile, Roland simply replies that he's glad to hear it. Dominic grows pensive, stating that he sometimes thinks about these things. His eyes are distant as he contemplates the nature of power and ability. He wonders aloud what he would do if he possessed overwhelming, unearned power. He calls out to Roland, who has started to walk away from their conversation. He tells Roland to hurry, as the hero of the divine sword is waiting for him. Roland stops, looking down at his own hands, acknowledging his innate, God-given power. He concludes that possessing such power is, in its own way, a very difficult thing to bear. The scene shifts to the exterior of a grand ornate academy building framed by trees. A girl with pigtails, Henrienne, asks her small gnome friends what happened in the garden that day. The gnomes describe a fearsome black dog, but she casually says she sings to it every day. She giggles to herself, covering her mouth politely at the thought. She explains that the old academy is a precious place where magical creatures sometimes appear. Because of this, she continues, her morning patrols are an essential and indispensable routine. The gnomes greet her, noting she's early. She explains she has many morning classes. A gnome explains that their kind's mere presence is said to bring happiness to an estate. Henrienne beams, saying she is grateful to them for keeping the academy so clean. The gnomes praise her as a good girl, unlike the snooty rich students who ignore them. One asks if only people from the Oriole family are like her, causing her to look sad. A gnome looks on with a knowing, closed-eyed expression at her sudden change in mood. The other gnomes look at each other in confusion, wondering why she is suddenly sad. One of them asks Henrienne what is wrong, and she points to something on the stairs. She notes that the object wasn't there yesterday, and that she has never seen it before. With a serious expression, she decides to collect the strange object for closer examination. Her expression shifts to alarm as she looks up and exclaims that it's all a misunderstanding. A group of students, led by Prince Edward, confronts her as she kneels on the stairs. Two girls with the prince insist they didn't push anyone, claiming it's all a mistake. Prince Edward glares down, telling the kneeling Henrienne that she is being unsightly. A boy with glasses accuses her, stating they have witnesses, and demands she confess her crime. Henrienne pleads that it's a misunderstanding, saying a black mass fell from the sky. She begs them to listen, but the boy with glasses insists she must accept her punishment. She desperately calls out to Dominic, who stands nearby but avoids her gaze in turmoil. A girl beside Henrienne looks on in fear, asking what is going to be done to them. In a grand hallway, a young woman calls out to a boy named Dominic as he walks away. Standing alone, she finds the prince's behavior unsettling, confirming the boy was her fiancé. Small gnomes at her feet advise her to reconsider her engagement to someone so dismissive. As a carriage arrives, Roland senses a commotion, wondering what has happened at the academy. He and his companion Rune look on with curiosity as the ornate carriage passes. A girl with pigtails rushes past, startling Rune with her hurried and frantic pace. The girl turns back, recognizing one of Roland's friends and calling out to Edith. She then gasps in surprise, recognizing the other companion, Rune. In the courtyard, the two young women exchange polite, formal greetings. The girl is identified as Edith, Dominic's fiancée and daughter of the Lasvel store owner. Edith then turns her attention to Roland, tentatively asking who he might be. With a charming smile, he introduces himself as Roland Valérie Oriol. Overcome with flustered gratitude, Edith thanks Rune for always listening to her. She begins to mention an incident, but Roland and Rune urge her to tell Roland's brother. Rune explains to the others that Edith is a passionate student of magical creatures. Roland muses that his impression of monsters might change if he ever met one. Edith eagerly asks if he, the legendary hero, has truly met them, wanting to talk. Roland asks if her interest in magical beasts is real, and she passionately confirms it. Edith admits she misjudged Edith, realizing she is a smart and wonderful person. Rune thinks to herself about how Edith could be engaged to such a good person. Edith asks about Dominic, but Rune quickly dismisses the question as nothing important. The name reminds Edith of something, and she cries out in panic, startling Roland. She anxiously asks if they are aware of the major incident from yesterday. Roland and Rune are confused, asking what incident she is referring to. Edith explains that yesterday afternoon, a Lady Crystal apparently fell down the stairs. Roland asks if Crystal is okay, but Edith admits she doesn't know the full details. She reveals that a friend of Adrian's was accused and taken away by Prince Edward. Roland and his companions stare, their expressions frozen with shock and concern. He and Rune erupt in disbelief, demanding to know what she just said. The group now stands outside the academy, contemplating the gravity of the situation. Edith grimly states that they are now completely too late to intervene easily. Roland remains silent, his expression hardening with a quiet, determined resolve. Edith relays a chilling threat from Constance, who vowed to directly harm Crystal. A young man, Roland, considers the unfolding crisis, surprised by the enemy's swift and crude methods. His companions, Elena and Edith, wonder why they have not yet heard from Prince Edward's right-hand man. With a thoughtful expression, Roland realizes this is exactly the kind of evidence needed to frame Adrian. Another ally, Rasbril, explains that Dominic was at the scene but left without a word. She frantically apologizes, admitting she was so flustered that she forgot to inform the hero first. Roland processes this new information, understanding that Lady Adrienne is already aware of the situation. With a look of grim urgency, he realizes he must rendezvous with his allies immediately. The sinister second Prince Jeremy looms in a dark memory, his insidious plan coming to fruition. In the Grand Hall, Prince Edward furiously demands that Adrienne hand over the women with her. His aggressive companions look on as Adrienne's friends gasp in fear from below. While her friends are terrified, Adrienne glares back at the prince with cool, defiant composure. She turns slightly, calmly reassuring her frightened companions that she is perfectly fine. Her gaze hardens with resolve as she turns her full attention back to her accuser. Standing her ground, Adrienne asks the prince to state what crime her friends have committed. He furiously accuses them of harassing Lady Crystal and pushing her down the grand staircase. The prince's face is a mask of rage as he tells her not to feign ignorance. Adrienne coolly inquires about her supposed relationship with this Lady Crystal. She wonders why she would harass a stranger, asking if the prince has a personal grudge. Edward grits his teeth, his face contorting with anger at her infuriatingly calm personality. He seethes internally, enraged by what he perceives as a wicked, uncooperative woman. Observing from the side, Elena notes the situation is a powder keg as a crowd gathers. Rasbril suggests asking Dominic to mediate, but Roland dismisses the idea with a knowing look. He suspects Dominic has been influenced by a demon woman and is no longer a reliable ally. The group stands together, momentarily unsure of how to proceed in the tense standoff. Elena offers a chillingly direct solution, asking if they should just kill everyone involved. She then suggests destroying the staircase itself to eliminate the evidence and resolve the matter quickly. Roland remembers that a Lady Constance has been spreading false information about Adrienne harassing Crystal. To prove Adrienne's innocence, he realizes they must find the true cause of Crystal's fall. Rasperal suddenly recalls that she collected a piece of evidence from the scene that morning. She holds out a small vial containing a tuft of dark fur, wondering if it's connected. While animal fur is sometimes found in the school, she remembers this was something entirely new. The cleaning brownies had also confirmed they had never seen anything like it before. Elena recognizes the fur, noting it resembles the tail of the Cerberus they recently fought. A young woman with pigtails marvels at the idea of an Oriole family maid fighting a demon. She apologizes for getting sidetracked, and her companions agree to continue their talk later. The girl theorizes that a demon beast is lurking, one that shows a harmless form. Roland's mind races, connecting the signs of a demon beast to the falling accident. A sharp mental click signifies the moment of his crucial, sudden realization. He exclaims that he has figured it out, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Turning to the pigtail-haired girl, he asks if she can identify the fur she found. He urgently commands her to research it in the library, stressing its utmost importance. Roland decides that his other companions, Lune and Elena, must also help with this task. With his team dispatched, Roland considers what he must do in the meantime. The scene shifts to the Grand Hall, setting the stage for a tense confrontation. Adrienne lectures Prince Edward, telling him to be silent as she won't hear his opinions. She addresses him by his full title, her defiant glare locking with his angry one. Roland appears walking up the grand staircase towards the standoff on the landing. Edward greets him with a smug, teasing tone, remarking on how late he is. The prince asks if Roland heard the news from their mutual acquaintance, Dominic. Roland repeats Dominic's name aloud, his expression one of pure confusion. One of Edward's companions looks on with a slightly annoyed expression. The same companion clicks his tongue in clear irritation at the situation. Roland's eyes narrow as he realizes Dominic deliberately neglected to contact him. Edward gives a flimsy, insincere apology for the supposed communication delay. A strange smile appears on Roland's face, showing he doesn't believe the excuse. Edward grandly announces that they are about to expose Adrienne's wicked deeds. Adrienne watches the exchange, her expression hardening with fury at the public display. She seethes internally, realizing they waited for an audience just to humiliate her. Roland is shocked by the sheer level of her suppressed rage. Adrienne's inner thoughts promise that she will make Edward pay for this humiliation. Roland's clear voice cuts in, reassuring her that he is on her side. In a brief flashback, Roland asks Edward if Crystal was truly pushed down the stairs. Edward clarifies that she merely misstepped, resulting in a minor but painful sprained ankle. He explains that because of the accident, she is now resting and taking it easy. Roland is incredulous, wondering why such a minor injury caused a massive commotion. Edward, looking uncharacteristically flustered, apologizes to a surprised Roland. Standing in the corridor, Edward confesses he visited Crystal without Roland, who comprehends why. A young man named Roland holds his hands up, explaining he was home all afternoon. His thoughts reveal his true activity, secretly investigating the second prince, Jeremy. His blonde companion, Edward, admits he had intended to call Roland to share information. Edward clarifies that his group was acting independently, not trying to corner anyone. Roland thoughtfully processes Edward's explanation and his apparent intentions. His expression then shifts, showing surprise at this unexpected turn of events. He grits his teeth, his profile showing a mix of frustration and resolve. Roland understands the advice he received from Dominique and resolves to proceed. Edward smirks with condescension, remarking on the amusing sight of a noble apologizing. With a sudden burst of righteous fury, he makes a booming public declaration. He points an accusing finger, announcing they have found Crystal's attackers. The accusation lands on Adrienne's friends, who gasp in terrified shock. Adrienne's initial surprise quickly hardens into a look of steely defiance. She steps forward, passionately insisting her friends are innocent victims being framed. Edward counters, claiming he has testimony directly from Crystal herself. Roland's expression darkens as he considers the existence of Crystal's testimony. Edward's spiky-haired companion angrily questions if they would force her to lie. Roland realizes that if she didn't fall, a true culprit definitely exists. Adrienne understands that false information from Lady Constance has framed her faction. A side profile shows Lady Constance, the source of the malicious rumors. Roland knows the suspicion will never clear without proof of another culprit. Edward points out their damning behavior, fleeing without helping the fallen Crystal. He presses the girls, demanding to know how they will explain their actions. The accused girls look flustered and are at a loss for words. Adrienne closes her eyes, calmly admitting that this part of his claim is true. She offers an apology on their behalf for failing to offer aid. Adrian explains that they were all shocked by the sudden, bizarre accident. She notes that despite many witnesses, no one actually saw the push. She adds that they were on a landing far from where Crystal fell. Adrian challenges the tyrannical leap of logic that condemns her friends. Edward simply lets out a dismissive scoff, his mind already made up. He unreasonably argues there are ways to push someone from a distance. He demands they prove their innocence by providing an impossible negative alibi. Adrian is stunned into silence by the sheer absurdity of his demand. She retorts that such a devil's proof is impossible to provide. Roland silently acknowledges that her point is absolutely correct and logical. A dark, grainy texture represents the oppressive atmosphere of the false accusation. Edward privately acknowledges his flimsy evidence, intending to use his overwhelming authority. His faction's goal is simply to establish Adrian's group as the villains. Adrian declares Edward has no right to publicly shame her noble friends. Edward is visibly incensed by her continued defiance and sharp words. He seethes, wondering how she still has the nerve to talk back. Roland's eyes widen as he recognizes his cue to finally intervene. He raises his hand sharply, announcing his interruption to the proceedings. Edward turns, asking what Roland wants, as Roland formally responds. The camera pans out, showing the tense scene on the grand staircase. Roland points out that Edward is acting as an authority figure, like a teacher. He asks if it isn't his duty as president to investigate the accident. Edward feigns agreement, saying he was about to suggest the same thing. He then tries to shift the responsibility onto Roland's shoulders. Adrian looks on, understanding the shift in the conversation's direction. She realizes Roland is reframing the situation as an official investigation. Roland has successfully shifted the focus from blaming Adrian to finding the cause. His true role, he thinks, is to buy time for his helper. Edward asks for Roland's opinion, noting Crystal claims she was pushed. Roland confirms her testimony, which causes Edward to shout in agreement. Edward wants to make someone pay, but Roland tells him to calm down. Roland considers the possibility that Crystal was indeed pushed as she claimed. Adrian watches this exchange, her expression one of stern concentration. A glint in his eye suggests Roland has an alternative theory. He asks aloud if perhaps something bumped into Crystal instead of someone. Edward looks confused by this new and unexpected line of inquiry. One of Adrian's friends cries out that this is exactly what happened. Adrian is puzzled, asking her friend what she means by a black mass. Edward's faction erupts in jeers, calling it another pathetic excuse. The girl insists that she truly did want to help her. She describes a terrifying black creature with yellow eyes that smiled at them. The girls apologize for running away in a panic from the scary sight. They admit they were hesitant to speak, fearing it was a bad dream. Edward scoffs, demanding proof of this so-called monster's existence. The girl admits the creature vanished in an instant, leaving no trace. Edward tells her to stop the clumsy excuses and admit her guilt. Just as he turns to leave, Adrian calls out for him to wait. A new figure appears at the top of the stairs, declaring she has evidence. The newcomer, Edith, stands confidently ready to speak. Roland is stunned but relieved, gasping her name in surprise. His eyes show that his helper has arrived right on schedule. He and Adrian both look up, their expressions ones of shared surprise. Adrian looks at him, asking if this was all part of his plan. Roland confidently reassures her that it is now their turn to act.